So I arrived in Durham in September, and this is my first year teaching here, and I've taught in several other institutions before. And there's a couple of things I've noticed different about Durham, other than the obvious having a wonderful cathedral right next to where I teach. The students, there's some very bright students, and there's been some very bright students in other places I've taught, but the students seem to be particularly hardworking and to show a lot of initiative here. So I think there's a slightly harder work ethic among the Durham students. But my colleagues are also slightly different than those that I'm used to, in the sense, again, that I've had excellent colleagues elsewhere, and there are in many departments across the UK, there are very, very good theologians and people who do religious studies. But Durham seems to me unusually integrated as a department, that there are interests which cross amongst all of us. So it's a really nice place to study, where every colleague that I have, I start to see that there are points of connection between us. And I suspect that this probably also affects the student experience, in the sense that if we all see ourselves as doing interconnected things, we will probably teach in a more coherent way. I didn't start with theology as a discipline as an undergraduate. I actually meandered around a little bit, as the American education system allows one to do. And for a while I thought that I would like to study philosophy. But I was perhaps unlucky in hitting a particularly dull philosophy module at one stage. And I just happened to start doing a little bit of theology, and was struck by the fact that it allowed me to pursue all the kinds of interests that I had that drew me to theology, to philosophy, but to pursue them in a way that was much richer and more historically oriented and more connected to things that matter to people. So I felt that in theology there was a subject rich enough to spend a whole lifetime on, without growing bored, without feeling confined, and also challenging enough to spend a whole lifetime on. So I've always felt it was a great piece of luck to be able to follow a career in theology. So I think that there are some very good things about studying a degree in theology. One of them is the sheer variety of the subject. You can do things that resemble classics in theology, you can do things that resemble philosophy, you can approach it historically, you can approach it sociologically, you can approach it through literature. So for people who don't want to become too narrowly confined too soon, theology makes for an excellent broad education. That's one of the things I think is really good about studying theology. A second thing is that I think you'd have to be nearly inhuman not to find that the things you study in theology are interesting and deeply connected to your experience. This is most obviously the case for people who are religiously practicing, but not only for those. I think that the sort of big questions that are asked in theology, considering the many ways historically that people have approached these questions, and that people now do them, is just an utterly fascinating thing to do. So I've only once in the sort of 15 or 18 years I've been teaching theology known a student who said that he was quite bored by it. And I also think that he spent a lot of his time affected by drugs, that particular student. So I don't think I don't really think it's possible to be bored by theology. It can lead in a number of ways subsequently in a career market. It can, everyone thinks, do people go and get ordained if they study theology? And the fact is that yes, some people do, but it's probably 2, 3, 4% of theology students actually go into becoming, maybe a bit more in a place like Durham. You can become a teacher, and there's a great demand for teachers of RE, RS in schools. I've known students who work for politicians, who work in aid agencies, Christian Aid, CAFOD, places like that, who go into law. You can go into all kinds of different careers in theology, but because of the broad training, the training in writing and reading and sensitivity to different positions, it is a good basis for quite a range of things.